Hello, welcome to Middle Class Jobs presentation part 3 of 3, Education. My name is Mark Bartold. I'm with Bebo Analytics. I've studied politics and history and economics all my life. I've gone to college as far as 2-year degree in politics and economics. C-SPAN, adamant watcher of that, watching debates over the decades. PBS, very informative news program. Bloomberg News for where the money's going. Newspapers and real life experiences have taught me most of what I've learned over my time. Education is a very important aspect of how a society develops. Early learning is very important. Most people struggle to know what to do with an infant all the way up to 4 years old. Trial and error eventually prevails, and the damage is dependent on how fast you learn. I was not too familiar with what was going on at a young age. Not sure what I learned at what age. However, once I went to college, it was far easier to learn for some reason. A lot of it is dependent on parents and what they know. My plan for school is to have pre-K through 12th grade reduced to at least the 10th grade level, so that 11th and 12th grade are eliminated. But I'm even in the camp to go even further than that. Of course, it's going to be incremental change on that. But I think the ultimate goal is to eliminate high school altogether. No high school diplomas. Instead, the high school years would be split with 2 years, in which case it would actually be 2 to 4 years to get an AA or an AS degree, replacing the high school diploma. So 9th, 10th grade, you start your community college experience. Now, ultimately, you'll have to have educators figure out how we can do this, and maybe the AA and AS degree isn't quite the caliber of what it is today, but it is still going to be an upgrade from high school. And we're going to eliminate 4 years of high school to make it to 2 years of learning, which could be, let's say, 11th and 12th grade being taught, and 9th and 10th instead, as another example. And then after those years, you go on to where the philosophy behind this is to have kids more interested in what they're interested in, so that they're not getting bored in school, and they're able to take classes that they're interested in. Now, obviously, reading, writing, and arithmetic are still going to be baselines. Pre-K through 5th grade would get the budgets from what you would use in 9th grade high school, so that they can improve their economic conditions. More quality tutoring and development of these important age groups. And they're very important age groups, everyone seems to say. Pre-K through 5th grade, very important years. So by getting more budgets for it to improve their situation will be a good head start. And then you've got 6th, 7th, and 8th grade that can have additional funding from 10th grade that would be eliminated. And more quality tutoring again, develop these age groups, get them basic classes and elective classes. and get them prepared for the AA and AS degree programs that'll be implemented instead of high school. Now, there again, maybe it's 3 years instead of 2 years for the AAAS degree in order to get it up to par. And again, you eliminate 4 years, maybe you take one back, and then it's only 3 years. There's also life experiences that may put people into situations where they have to hold back a year for one reason or another. Car accidents or illnesses, maybe even COVID-19 is a good example. They'll still be at a young enough age to continue their education, even though they'll be a year behind, that it doesn't really affect them in the later years of trying to get their education together. But in the end, we're going to try and get less time and redundancy and more time in teaching the kids what they want to be taught, because every kid is different. They want their own type of system. 9th and 10th grade would be AAS degree, as I said before, 2 to 4 years to complete. Again, yeah, maybe it's 3 years, right? Maybe it's 4 years, much like the same, the community college type system. But you have to limit it to 4 years, and then after that, then you'll have other community college experiences that deal with people that are out of school, returning students that are of ages, in the 20s or 30s. You're going to have to separate them out in that respect. Funding will come from existing funding of community colleges and trade schools. So 9th and 10th grade would be the AAS degrees. Those funding would be the 11th and 12th grade that you've eliminated, right? 11th grade would be trade school funding. And continued education for bachelor's degrees. Because of curriculum requirements at different colleges, being particular, 3 to 4 years will still be required to get a bachelor's degree. Now, the age groups I'll get into later on how that's all panning out as far as how old are you going to be now, and how is this all going to work. The main thing is we can cut the funding, not cut the funding, but reallocate the funding to implement the trade schools. I think is the most part that's going to be the benefit here, is to get more trade school, and also the elective type system of 2-year degree colleges to get the 2-year degrees sooner. Gives them the capabilities to go on to college sooner. Masters and doctorates will be acquired at younger ages too. AA and AS degrees would be obtained at 16 years old. Imagine. And normally, high school, you graduate, you're about 18 years old. So then 2 years of community college, then you come out at 20. Now, you get that 2-year degree as early as 16 years old. That's a 4-year advance situation there. That's, there are some cases where kids do that anyway. They're far advanced. But in this case, we want to improve the situation where these kids are able to get their schooling done at a quicker pace so that they can go on and get their bachelor's degree or master's degree, and a bachelor's at 19 or 20 years old. So 4-year degrees being done by 20, when normally you just get a 2-year degree done. So we're saying that eventually, you're really sort of trimming at least 2 years off, and it gives someone the ability to be, before a high school diploma was enough, right? A high school diploma was like all you really needed to get jobs, doing all kinds of different jobs. Nowadays, Even an AAAS degree, which we'll say is equivalent to a high school degree now, it still isn't quite enough. So a bachelor's degree has to be obtained to equate to a high school diploma. Now you need a minimum a bachelor's degree, and that's where you're going to be able to get specific areas that people will have knowledge in, as opposed to just a high school education. The bachelor's degree will be more targeted towards, and of course people have multiple bachelor's degrees, so sometimes too you change your major, and that's where the AAAS degrees come in, where it could take 2 to 4 years, because in some cases you may change your major, but a lot of baseline classes like English and math, probably algebra is going to be done in AAAS degrees, but the main thing is to get the students interested in what they want, and to have them take those type of classes as opposed to classes that are redundant or ones that they're not interested in at all. Doctorates at 25 years old will be common. I mean, a doctorate's degree at 25 years old. Now, do you want a 25-year-old doctor coming in? Probably not. But what's going to happen is they'll have at least a couple years. There again, when I was 25 years old, I was a supervisor in charge of 40-some people at Goodwill Industries. So, if I'm not very mechanically inclined, but someone that wants to be a doctor, they study to be a doctor, they learn everything about being a doctor, and the amount of energy at 25 years old, my gosh, right? So, you probably want a 25-year-old doctor, only because of the fact that they're, sorry about the video there, being 25 years old and having them work on me, maybe not such a bad deal, because they're going to be more fresh. Do you want a 80-year-old doctor working on you? Probably not, because they're on the tail end of things. Sure, they got the experience, but they might have a shaky hand, right? So the ACT and SAT scores can still be used, and there is room for taking a year off for students that have unexpected life developments, like I had said before. And, it happens, life is unpredictable. Let's say someone goes skiing and breaks their leg, and they're unable to go to class for whatever reason, or let's say they break their hand that they use to write, or for typing on the computer. They are unable to do it for whatever reason, and so unexpected death in the family, that's travesty. I had stopped working at a state job for a little while because of my mother passing. I just couldn't handle it after a little while, so I needed a break. But at any rate, life happens, So these are different things that should help the education system perform a lot better, because one, you're going to have more resources for the lower end, and two, you're going to have students that are going to be more engaged in their learning process. Funding for college and trade schools is a national interest, and it is a national interest. Skills and education will help the country grow into a prosperous nation. The tax revenue that would come in from more successful people and a larger middle class will help fund additional education opportunities for children and grandchildren. People that have higher education usually have higher pay grades, and those higher pay grades result in more income tax revenue and capabilities as far as buying a house and it just generates a very good economic situation all the way around. Um, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th century jobs are not couch potato jobs. Companies need skilled labor, and why have the companies look to other countries for those skills when we can develop those employees here? That is the main thing. Taught at home students and online classes. Many students are taught at home. Many were forced to teach at home when COVID 19 struck. A lot was said about kids having issues when they weren't allowed to go to school, and some do, while others have no problem being taught at home. It should be up to the parents to decide whether or not to do that. I mean, some parents can teach at home and some are just not capable of that, maybe for whatever reasons. Online classes help students that are in rural areas at work more than they like to get an education. Many colleges resorted in online classes over COVID 19, and the increased participation of colleges offering these classes has made online classes affordable. No classrooms needed or dorm rooms if we could provide more education online. And that's the thing. Imagine you eliminate those 4 years of high school, right? You eliminate that. So now those high schools are empty. Now, of course, now what you actually do is you bring in the community college type students, and that's where they'll be taught is at the high schools. So instead, the high schools turn into community colleges. Now, the community colleges wind up being for the older, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50-year-olds that are getting continued education there, and also for the trade schools, the added trades that we would add to like plumbing, electricians, carpenters, welders, you know, mechanics, computer technology, of course, that just which some of these community colleges already do that, but you know, to expand on the different ones. Nursing has been an increase in those, and that's where, you know, to build more schools, you don't have to, because you're able to resource them through getting them out sooner. Like I said, a 2-year degree at 16 years old. My gosh, right? I mean, that's less time. That's less students that are having to be in a building. So you're able to move out these kids quicker and get them into the workforce quicker. And they'll provide tax revenue for a longer period of time. You know, by getting into the workforce sooner, they'll be paying taxes sooner as opposed to staying at the house until they're 30 years old, you know, paying off debt or still going to try and get that master's degree, still at home at 30. They can be 25 years old with a doctorate degree, operating. I mean, that's such a massive difference, you know, in our limited lifespan, right? And so this is how the country can really advance itself at a much quicker pace and try and catch up with the rest of the world. Mark my words, this is probably not a new thing. I have not investigated how India does it, does their education system. I haven't resourced South Korea or maybe even China in some cases. They may have advanced learning classes. Japan, you know, Germany, I tell you what, back in the 70s when I lived in Germany, you talk about feeling like a dumb box of rocks, comparative to what the Germans were doing in 70s. You know, I had visited a class that a friend of mine was in, and they were so more advanced than me, and I just felt dumb, you know. But at any rate, the advanced learning techniques and getting the kids out of the high school, altogether makes a world of difference. There's already classes, community college classes that are being used at high school levels, students. And so there's already a movement towards that type of philosophy. And like I said, 11th and 12th grade could easily be eliminated. But my suggestion is to go even further and just eliminate all 4 years of high school altogether to push things along much quicker. And you know how kids will have to grow up quicker in some cases because of one thing or another. Let's have our kids grow up a little quicker. I mean, do we really want them sitting around the house and extra hours on TikTok or, all these things with their spare times, their summers off, right? Like a 14, 15-year-old could be going to an associate's arts classes as opposed to just sitting at the house watching TV or playing video games. I mean, they can still do that sparingly, but for a whole summer they're off. It's there's no job at 14 or 15 years old, so why not have them have the job, which at 14 and 15 you're more mature, than a 10-year-old. Okay, and so you're able to start to do things. You have different things that you want to do. You think you're smarter than everybody else, right? I mean, a lot of teenagers are that way, right? So why not have them put them in a situation? It's like, well, let's see how smart you are. Oh, you want to do this type of thing when you grow up? All right. Well, we'll give you some elective classes that you like, and you can work on cars or work on plumbing, welding, whatever you want to do. And then when you're 16 years old and graduate with an AAAS degree, you can go to college. Since driving age, I believe, is 16. You can go to college, or you go to trade school for more welding jobs, more concentrated on, or carpentry, or whatever you decide you want to do in trades. A lot of people tell there's all this talk about college, but no one ever talks about the trade schools. And the trade schools, to me, is a large share of a population because most people are not college material. But you still have to have enough knowledge to read the books to deal with plumbing. You still have to have some math skills for plumbing. And so you have to have some stuff. Some stuff's got to be taught to you no matter what, whether you like it or not. But, some literature's good. But then, if you're not going to be a literature major, you don't need to continually have more literature classes when, in this day and age, if you really start to think about, hey, I'd really like to know more about art or literature, that's what the internet's for. And, there's so much more nowadays where you can look up stuff, as far as doing papers and all that. The kids can start to do at a younger age. They can get the source material and, look, we got to accelerate our education process. I mean, 18 years old, you're going off to war in some cases, you should at least be a 2-year degree under your belt with understanding of different things. And of course, there's still military schools. The trade schools doesn't have to be just carpentry and plumbing. It could be, maybe even some sports, right? Basketball, trade school, maybe, right? A lot of basketball students come out, they're in the NBA at 18 years old, right? So you could have trade schools for sports. You could have trade schools for uh, the military, of course, maybe even seamanship. Anything that kids really want to do when they grow up. There can even be like security, police to study to be a police officer. A lot of things are, some of these. To be a police officer doesn't seem like there's enough training when it comes down to it. I mean, they give you, I don't know, 6 months training maybe. Whereas if you could have a 2-year process, they can learn everything to the point where they could be the most professional of police officers. You got nursing school, of course. There's just many avenues and a lot of things that are not being done now, or you can't find in local areas that could be implemented to help bring a more diverse and more skilled labor scenario, especially when we are getting some jobs back that we had lost mainly because of the COVID-19, the supply chain situation gave a big scare to everyone, and they realized it's like, hey, wait a minute, we can't get these supplies in because of a disease, or it could be a national disaster, or weather disaster that cuts off supply chains where there's some stuff that you absolutely have to have, and if you only have the one country developing it, it's a problem. So. But having the skilled labor, you have to have trade schools to help it out. Accountability and testing. Accountability is, I have mentioned in my other videos, in my book, Middle Class Jobs, it's very important and should be laid out with educators and business leaders to develop a more detailed plan than I have even suggested. I mean, this is just an outline. I believe my plan's outline is workable and will get kids off the streets and into classrooms that they want to be in, rather than drag them through the high school years in limbo. Testing guidelines have to be used in order to determine the student's level and how to bring the student up to acceptable levels for their learning experience to be more fulfilling. This is a very controversial subject matter, the testing, the SATs and ACTs. There has to be some kind of a baseline. Are you a dummy or not? It's like, well, we're not necessarily saying that, when you look at the testing, it's just where do you fall, and there again, oh, this is the way you're going to be forever. No. I think, there should be the retest of saying that, oh, this is your IQ and then you got it for the rest of your life. No, you should be able to advance that and retest and 2 years out later or whatever, in order to, because you do, when you get older, you do learn more things and you do become smarter if you really work at it. Not everyone is college material is not an answer. My parents had told me that, and which is amazing to me, right? I still managed to get a 2-year degree, But anyway, but in some cases they were right. Do I know how to study? Probably not. I did what I could. I don't have a very good memory. And so that's usually been my downfall, and I've had to spend more time than probably some average student to try and remember material for tests. But repetition and repetition, does help you out. But when you got a lot of, when you got, okay, well, maybe I need an extra year or two in school. You know, if it's such a young age anyway, you're still at home type student, um, then it shouldn't matter, because it's not like, oh, I can't go off and start my life at 18 if you're only 16 having to repeat 1 year. You know, it's not a big deal. So, you know, you have that extra time to be able to, you know, fulfill what is needed to be a baseline of, this is how much knowledge you need to go out and be a plumber. You know, like I had said before, you know, a plumber still has to be able to read and have math skills, you know, to know, you know, how much pipe do you need, you know, how much flow of water comes through the pipes, you know, what kind of pressure. There's all kinds of things, and I'm just sort of guessing at that, but I'm sure I know, you know, the plumber might watching this might say, wow, he knows a little bit, but not enough. But, you know, there again, I'm not a plumber. But there are things I know enough that, you know, you have to be able to know certain things in order to get the right plumbing material, you know, right pipe size and so on. So, yeah, middle class jobs require middle class teachers, professors to teach our skills to do our jobs. That will grow this country into a juggernaut, and it will. You know, make America great again. Well, you know, this is the way you do it. You got to educate people. You got to train people in trade schools and get people to work. You know, middle class jobs is the way to do it. It solves every problem, from the border crisis. If you increase the amount of military, if you increase the amount of National Guard, Border Patrol, increase immigration officers to process people, all these things that I've mentioned throughout these videos, every one of them, middle class jobs solves all the problems we have: war on drugs, everything. Eliminating the high school years and replacing those years with classes that are taught in community college will shorten a process, this age of computers, that students' knowledge through the internet, and make students hungry for more information. It'll make them more hungry for more information. Because I remember high school being a little, you know, lackadaisy, and it seemed like it was too easy in a way. And like I said, I seem to have too much time on my hands, especially the summer months. Like I said, when the summer breaks and everything else, it's just too much time, you know, where nothing's happening. Where if you have community college type situations, you might even work through the summer as far as taking a few classes just to, you know, to thin it out throughout the year, so it's not too overbearing, and then you can have more time to concentrate on all these classes. Accelerating the process will be beneficial financially and practical terms of getting a skilled workforce. And that's the thing, we need a skilled workforce. And the younger, you know, the younger the skilled force labor is, the better, because they'll last longer. You know, they'll be fresher in my mind. You know, they got more energy. Young people have much more energy than a 50-year-old, let me tell you. So at the end of the day, you're able to get more skilled labor. You know, they say, well, McDonald's employee should only get minimum wage. Well, you know, I mean, they're still working. I mean, they, you know, minimum wage, $7.25 an hour, still unbelievable. But at any rate, nobody gets that anymore. But what happens is, you know, you get more people that are skilled. You're able to get more tax revenue, reducing the amount of time in the high school years to zero, basically, makes it savings, tax savings like you wouldn't believe. And it also, like I said, pre-K to 8th grade will benefit from the 9th and 10th grade that's eliminated revenue, expenses, and have it processed throughout the prior years to increase the efficiency, and it's just going to be beneficial all the way around. And I appreciate your time And I'll have more videos on other things later. I pretty much wanted to rush through these three segments. Obviously, I could spend a lot more time. I actually thought I spent a lot more time than I thought I was going to spend on these. I mean, this one's actually the shorter video. But education, it's a baseline of how a society is going to fare. I mean, South Korea, they have a very well-educated workforce. And, Germany, a lot of other countries, and I believe it was Sweden or one of those countries that had, they only went to school for like 4 hours a day or something. So, I mean, that's the thing. We need to get to where kids are not spending all their time in school where they're just so exhausted. You know how you work in an 8 to 10 hour day, you're pretty tired the last few hours. Like students are that way too, in some cases. Or you have the repetition of stuff that's not really needed for a certain student, doesn't really want to learn, and may not really need. Geometry a lot of times may not necessarily be something that a student wants at a later date. But yes, middle class jobs, middle class jobs, middle class jobs. Create those and the country will be great again. The main thing is, call your congressman and say, look, we need middle class jobs. You need to create more middle class jobs. Whatever problems that you say, the border or anything else, create those middle class jobs so that we can process people at the border and provide work visas, because we need those labor. We need those labor. We need them for let's say the fast food restaurants or any other lower skilled jobs. If we're going to educate our workforce, then we still need those lowercase workforce. So we need immigrants to help us on that. We also need the immigrants for all the other skills too, middle class and upper level skill sets too. We still need that, especially if you want to expand the country and grow into the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th century. You gotta have skilled labor for that, and educated people. I mean, look, you gotta have physicists. You have to have all the really smart people. The intellects. You need the people that design buildings, the architects, and that's where geometry would be something that they would take, whereas another student may not necessarily need geometry for doing business administration, right? I mean, business administration is just, that could be a very quick, many people take that as a quick 4-year degree. Now, the 4-year degrees too, let's say there's art, right? How much art degree do you need? If you're going to be an artist, do you need a 4-year degree to be an artist? Probably not, right? You could probably say that 2-year degree, AAAS degree, is enough. But there's art schools that can be developed. Musicians, it's practice, 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 right? So if you get them at a younger age, and then they spend 2 hours on practice on it. The trade schools, right? The trade schools could be the music, right? And so you could have more symphonies. You could have more acting, and the content for Netflix and Hulu and all that. They've been starving for it, content, right? And so you can develop all that content, to the point. But having these trade schools will help develop all these different areas, aside from having it in high school. See, like in high school, you have those type of things, but now you can have it for the community college set or trade school set, so that they get it that way. So it's win-win all the way around. And financially, it's so sound, because there's a starvation and the dollars for the lower, for elementary schools and everything else. take it from the high school budget, give half of it to them. The other half goes for the trade schools, and you're done, and everybody wins, and that's the key. We got to have a better way to do all this. Accountability, accountability, accountability. We need to account for ourselves and get things done. Thank you very much. Have a good day.